안녕하세요. 두 번째 영상을 기다려주셔서 감사합니다. 제가 마크모스의 이 영상을 처음 접했을 때 내용이 너무 좋다고 생각했습니다. 그래서 혼자만 알고 있기에는 너무나 아까운 인사이트라고 생각했죠. 그래서 부족한 실력이지만 이렇게 번역하고 편집해서 여러분과 나누게 되었습니다. 저는 우리가 비트코인을 단순한 투기 수단이 아니라 장기적인 관점에서 현명하게 이해하고 활용한다면 분명 부에 한 걸음 더 가까워질 수 있다고 생각합니다. 자, 지난 1편에서 기존 은퇴 시스템의 한계를 확인했다면 이번 2편에서는 부자들이 빚을 어떻게 돈으로 바꾸는지 그리고 왜 비트코인이 그 유일한 치트키인지 확인해 보겠습니다. 함께 보시죠.
Okay, make sure you're paying attention here. We're going to go deep. Again, this is a serious video. This is maybe one of the most important videos I've ever made because I want to change this process. It really makes me mad. Okay, what is the 1% wealth formula? Well, let's compare it. Let's compare it to the middle class formula and the 1% formula. So, the strategy. How do we think about income? Well, the middle class trade time for money. So they're working and they're using the money that they get from working to pay for their life, trading time for money. The wealthy, they make money to build assets. And then those assets generate income. It's a different strategy. They're working, they're buying assets. And those assets pay for the life. It's a different strategy. Number two, what about investing? Well, middle class, they save in a tax-deferred account. So every 2 weeks, part of your paycheck goes into your 401k, your mutual fund. It's tax-deferred. It grows tax-deferred. And when I hit that age, 62, 72, whatever, I can pull it out and pay taxes. But the wealthy, they acquire appreciating assets instead. Not tax-deferred. They acquire assets that go up in value. Growth. The middle class, they compound their interest at 8 to 10% a year. Hopefully the market doesn't crash and it keeps going up. And 8 to 10% per year it's compounding. But the wealthy, the 1%, they leverage and add velocity. We talk about investing into layers, using leverage. So instead of getting 8 to 10%, the wealthy are getting 25%. They're getting 50%. And they're getting 500% gains by investing into layers. Taxes. The middle class, they pay later. Remember, they're deferring. So they're paying a lot of taxes on the money they get up front, and then the little bit they put away, when they get it out later, they got to pay taxes on it. But the wealthy, they minimize or completely eliminate their taxes. They don't pay that. Why would I want to give up half my money to the government? How fast can I grow if I have to give money to the government? The wealthy do it differently. Assets. Middle class. They sell the assets to fund their retirement. Remember, save for 40 years. Then when you retire, you can sell your assets to pay for your retirement. The wealthy do it differently. The 1%, they keep their assets forever. They pass that wealth to generation to generation to generation. They do that by borrowing against their assets. The timeline, it takes the middle class 40 years to either have no money, as we saw, or the 50% that do have 200 grand, which is enough. It takes them 40 years to get there. But the 1%, they do it in 5 years. Now, I don't know about you, but I like this 1% approach better. This is where I want to be. Now, the problem with this is typically for 1% wealth. That's been the problem. So most people haven't been able to tap into this. And some of you might go, Mark, this is ridiculous. That can't work. Well, how many billionaires do you hang out with, right? So you haven't heard of this, but they do it. The problem is it's been reserved for people that have a lot of money. But something changed. We have the new financial asset that enables anyone, you, to do this right now. The single biggest difference between financial success and financial failure, success or failure, your choice, is owning a few income-producing assets. Grant Cardone. Now, I want to break this down, but it's not what you think. It's not about buying rental real estate like Grant Cardone would tell you. Okay. So what we want is we want to learn how to use strategic leverage. Keyword, strategic leverage. So let's again compare the middle class to the 1%. The path I'm going to teach you, don't worry. The strategy, how do they use debt? Okay, well, the middle class typically would put like 10% on their home, 5% onto credit cards, 4% into an auto loan. That's the type of credit, the type of loans that the middle class would get. The 1% do 30% on a home, 15% in a business, and 10% into investable debt. That's how they use debt. But the leverage is different. Okay, the leverage is that the middle class use the leverage to buy mostly depreciating assets. Okay, the credit cards, it's not appreciating. That's consumer debt. Autos, that's depreciating. So they've used the leverage that they have to buy depreciating assets. Of course, the 1% do it differently. They use leverage to buy assets. 85% into assets that go up in value, not down. Tax efficiency. So they're using leverage to write off their taxes. Using debt and leverage to buy assets that give them the tax write-off, 73%. Business, 62%. Using other people's money, leverage to build up businesses that are assets that go up in value. And consumer debt, less than 5%. So lots of debt, way more debt than the middle class. But it's all strategic leverage. It's all assets that are going up and barely any in consumer debt that's going down.
잠깐만요. 빚을 내서 투자하라니 너무 위험한 거 아니냐고 생각하실 수 있습니다. 하지만 여기서 마크모스가 말하는 핵심은 나쁜 빚과 좋은 빚을 구분하라는 것입니다. 부자들은 명품이나 차를 사려고 빚을 내는 게 아니라 나보다 더 열심히 일해서 돈을 벌어다 줄 자산을 사기 위해 레버리지를 쓴다는 점, 이 차이를 이해하고 넘어가야 합니다.
I like this quote from Tom Wheelwright, a tax strategist. The rich use debt to leverage investments and create additional income streams. That's what the rich use it for. While the average person, the middle class person, use debt to buy things that make rich people richer. Don't do it that way. We want to be able to buy assets that make us more wealthy. Okay, let's talk about the cheat code. Now, the cheat code is Bitcoin. Now, listen, before you roll your eyes and turn this off, let me break it down for you why. I'm not going to go super deep in this because I talk about it all the time. But Bitcoin is the first new financial asset in 500 years. We've had commodities forever, as old as the earth, obviously. Equities were created about 500 years ago. We have a new financial asset, and as our brains are comparing mechanisms, what is it? Well, it's sort of like this, and it's sort of like that, and it's sort of like that. It is like all those things, but it's something new. Now, when we have a new financial asset, it's a new building block that allows us to build new things that we couldn't build before. When we all of a sudden had steel, we could build things we couldn't build before, like skyscrapers and bridges, right? And now we have a new financial asset. And this is what allows people like you and I to do the same playbook as the 1% are doing right now. Why? Well, number one, we have mathematical certainty. So we have digital scarcity. So we know that the Bitcoin supply goes up, there will never be more than 21 million, and we know the issuance of that. So every 4 years, the issuance of that Bitcoin, that it caps at 21 million, goes down, gets cut in half every 4 years. Do you know what the Fed, central bank, is issuing money right now? Or the commercial banks, or China, or Japan? No, you don't. And so we have this certainty, all right? We have mathematical certainty, number one. Number two, we have scarcity and demand. So because Bitcoin is finite, all we have to do is understand the demand side. And as long as governments print more money, which seems like pretty much a certainty, and governments continue to want to increase censorship, then we can see that the demand will continue to rise. Now, we can understand the growth trajectory if we zoom out, and a lot of you are like, oh, Mark, it's just too volatile. It is, yes, but to the upside. So if you look at this path, you can see the projection. Now, it goes up and it comes down and up and down within this band. Okay, then we want to understand the growth trajectory. So I kind of showed you the history, but where is it going? Well, we can understand if we look at store of value assets, places that we park money. We save money in Bitcoin, in gold, collectibles, equities, real estate bonds, and money. So we have your savings. In 2010, that was valued at $387 trillion. 2010, 387. By 2020, this basket of goods was worth $852 trillion. From 330 to 850. Why? Why is that basket of savings, gold, real estate, equities, why is it getting bigger? It's getting bigger because it's where value is stored. And as the wealth of the world continues to grow, as governments continue to print money, these baskets grow from 380 to 852. Okay, so we can see that growing. Now, if we project that out based off of run rates, based off of what the government projects they'll continue to have deficit spending and so forth, we can project out from 2020 to where these basket of goods will be by 2030, and this $852 trillion basket will grow into $1.67 trillion or $1.6 quadrillion. Okay? So then the question is, what percentage of Bitcoin, how fast will Bitcoin continue to grow in this basket? Now we can see in recent history, Bitcoin's been going up by about 50% a year, and we think that will continue for a while. Now that will go down over time, and it will continue to go down. But what we understand is when we understand these technology cycles, using an S-curve, we know the biggest move is right here in front of us right now. So we have about the next 5 years to capture this massive, massive run-up, which is why we have a 5-year plan. Okay? And we believe that by the end of that run-up, in about 5 years, Bitcoin will be about the same size of global store of value assets as gold. Bitcoin and gold will be about on par, about 20 trillion each. But that's why this is the cheat code. It's the first asset that's going up this fast, and it allows us to do things that were typically only reserved for the wealthy that have a lot of money. Okay, so now that we have this new asset, this new cheat code, what kind of strategy can we deploy? Well, let's take a look. So number one, because we have this growth potential, what happens is historical growth rates equals self-repaying. What does that mean? So we want to, instead of selling assets, we borrow against the assets, right? So as long as the asset is growing faster than the rate of borrowing costs me, then it's basically self-paying. If I have an asset going up by 50% and I can borrow against it at 15%, I have a positive carry of 35%. I can do that forever. Number two, divisibility. With an asset like Bitcoin, I can borrow against small portions of it, unlike real estate. So with real estate, you have $1 million building, you have to refinance the $1 million. But what if you just need 50 grand? With Bitcoin, I can borrow against, I can take 5,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 or 100, whatever divisibility that you want. Liquidity, 24/7 global market for collateral and liquidity. The stock market's only open on banking hours on the weekdays. Again, trying to get money out of real estate could take a long time. I could literally pull out my phone right now and pull liquidity out against my Bitcoin in minutes directly from my phone.
앞에 대출 얘기에서 의문이 드실 것 같아요. 비트코인 담보대출? 그게 진짜 가능해? 라고요. 하지만 실제로 일부 코인 거래소에서는 이미 이루어지고 있는 서비스입니다. 최근 영국 정부에서도 암호화폐를 공식적으로 법률화했는데 이런 비트코인의 제도권 진입 속도를 볼 때 머지않아 우리가 이용하는 주요 금융권에서도 비트코인 담보대출 상품이 나올 것이라 확신합니다. 우리는 시스템이 갖춰질 때를 대비해 그저 비트코인을 꾸준히 모아가면 되는 거죠. 계속 보시죠.
It's borderless, jurisdictionally free. I can use this money globally. Of course, if I take money from my house, if I refinance my house, it probably needs to stay in that same jurisdiction, in the same type of asset. But with Bitcoin, it's borderless, non-correlation, low correlation to traditional financial markets. So it's completely out of the system and it's verifiable. So I have true ownership. When I get it, I have it, I know I have it, nobody else has it. That's what makes this asset the cheat code and uniquely positioned to pull off this strategy right now. Okay, so if we compare this, remember this is the old way. We don't like that. Selling assets for income, paying taxes on withdrawals, depleting principal over time, so you die with zero. Hope you don't outlive your savings. Heaven forbid you live longer. Vulnerable to market timings, 40 years. That's a non-starter. So the strategy, the cheat code strategy, the 5-year retirement is allowing us to keep our assets so they continue to grow over time. They continue to grow for the rest of our life. And even better, when I die and pass them on to my heirs, they keep growing for them. Okay, number two, we can borrow against our assets tax-free. So over here, when I sold my assets to pay for my life, then I had to pay the taxes. Remember, all that money in my 401k was growing tax-deferred. But when I pull it out, I got to pay taxes. Over here, instead, I borrow against the asset, and that money is debt, so it's tax-free. I don't pay any money on that. Over here, I never deplete my principal. My principal continues to go up and up and up forever, which means I can pass wealth to the next generation. I don't have to hope that I die earlier than my money runs out. Instead, I can live forever, my assets live forever, and that value gets passed to future generations. It's immune to market timing risk. We don't have to worry about if the stock market's going to plunge for 15 years because we're not selling the asset. We don't need to sell at a high point or a low point. We're not selling it. We're borrowing against it, and this allows us to have a 5-year implementation time frame, even if you start right now. We're going to break down the math for you. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so for the 5-year blueprint, 3 simple steps. Step number 1, start getting some Bitcoin. You got to have some Bitcoin to do this.
자, 이제 우리는 40년 저축 대신 부자들이 쓰는 전략적 부채를 이해했고 비트코인이 이 전략을 가능하게 하는 유일한 치트코드임을 확인했습니다. 이 편은 바로 이론이었습니다. 이제 남은 건 하나, 실행입니다. 다음 3편에서는 비트코인을 담보로 매년 세금 없이 현금 흐름을 만드는 그 충격적인 수학적 공식이 계산기로 직접 공개됩니다. 5년 뒤 매년 1억 원의 자유현금 흐름을 만드는 마법, 이 파이널 청사진을 절대 놓치지 마세요. 다음 영상에서 그 계산법을 들고 바로 돌아오겠습니다. 감사합니다.